All right, here we are with Exalted versus World of Darkness, City of the Bull God. We are in March 2022, so when you hear episode 1, listeners, be prepared to go back a bit. This got stretched out a bit. We're doing the intro episode, so today you have me, Devin, and with us we have...
Brendan, the storyteller who got roped into this.
Peter, do we introduce our characters now?
Say your name. It's just your name.
So it's just Peter.
Anyone else? Is anyone else here?
Oh, wait, you're next.
I said my name was Devin.
Well, I don't care.
Again.
The Cantankerous one's Holden. Hi.
And I'm Sam. Hello. I usually go last.
And you still did. Excellent. Perfect. We did it, gang.
We did it.
First try.
We changed the formula only slightly, and we did it flawlessly, and everyone just fell into line.
Yeah.
All right, let's...
I don't give a shit. I have a script in front of me. You go twice. That's how it goes.
All right, listeners. So we're doing an Exalted versus WoD game. Let's talk about that. So we'll break it down for you by the game we're playing, then the game we're running, like, the mechanics, like the system, the actual game itself, the characters, and then we'll just talk and dick around for a bit. So, Exalted versus World of Darkness. If you heard the name Holden and that voice and have any, I don't know if you know this somehow, what people sound like and are called, Holden Shear is the creator of Exalted versus WoD, and also the developer for Exalted 3rd Edition, like the entire 3rd Edition, like the whole book. That big book, that's that guy. So, this Exalted versus World of Darkness is not the first Exalted versus World of Darkness. It's actually is this the 2nd edition or the revised edition? What did you call it?
Yes.
Damn it.
I went with revised. Simply, it's a 2nd edition. I went with revised, simply because I didn't rewrite the entire book. I touched up and just re-included a lot of material from the original. So revised seemed more kind of accurate to what you were getting.
Absolutely. So to give you just a player's perspective, listeners, we're not going to talk a whole lot of Exalted versus WoD revised, like in this part. Well, maybe it'll be near the end of the episode, or maybe in an outro episode we eventually do. But brief overview, man, everything is better in it. Things have been cleaned up, rules have been added, new kind of widgets and features for the different Exalt types. A lot of clarification, a lot of tools for people who want to play a modern Exalted game are just there in the book now, and a lot of resources that, like, you would probably hate yourself having to look up if it came from the middle of the table. Like, take me. I absolutely fucking despise having to look up weapons. I wish books, when they're like, oh, hey, go to this book for this weapon or this book for that weapon. Like, what? And other games do that. I wish they didn't. This game actually has a weapon chart in the back. Like, it's a full weapon chart. It just has the weapons, the standard ones you're going to encounter in a game like this, so you can just have them there. There's advice on how to deal with like stuff like mass combat. There's advice on how to deal with militaries. There's advice on how to deal with the specific supernatural interactions between the Exalts and the various supernatural aspects of the game world. It's really interesting, and it really is good for making up ideas and concepts of what to do with this game, because this game is fairly unique. It's taking, I don't know, what are we up to now? 30, 40 years of World of Darkness, like the original World of Darkness books, and just being like, crack it open into a sandbox game. Here's a bunch of Gary's mod powers. Like, I know that's a very dismissive way to put it.
Yeah.
But it feels like
that's accurate.
Yeah.
That's accurate.
Like, look, it's very topical right now, listeners, because we're in 2022, and this is the best thing we have going for us right now. But Elden Ring came out.
Oh?
And
We're doing
what Exalted versus WoD feels like is being able to take a game that's very, and this is the example I'll use because it's topical. Elden Ring has a lot of attention to detail to it. Like the monsters have a lot of personality and like plotting and design and intent put behind them. The locations are like that. Everything in the game feels like a AAA team went through and put a lot of attention to detail with it. And that's kind of what you get with games like the old World of Darkness, or even like the first 2 editions of Exalted before the 3rd edition came along. These big legacy worlds and settings and concepts that people have been dicking around in for decades. Exalted versus WoD is like being able to go back to those games and like absolutely have more control than you possibly have ever had before, and more options and more choices available to you. Like, people like to talk about Exalted like you're going to go in and smash the setting over your kneecaps. And sure, that's there, but there's also just you have more interesting character ideas you can do. You have more interesting choices. Is what I'll repeat again, just from being an abyssal. Being an abyssal in Exalted versus WoD gives you an unprecedented amount of interaction with wraiths and specifically specters because they love you by default. And to tell your character's story from a perspective of having on your side a force that has otherwise almost universally been antagonistic to all characters that weren't specters. But as an abyssal, just part of their kit is specters like you and hang out with you. It's something you wouldn't really see in any other type of World of Darkness game. You're not going to play any World of Darkness game where specters treat you with any amount of respect or anything beyond like an animal waiting for you to turn its back on it. So that's how I pitch Exalted versus World of Darkness. You get to do all the options, all the choices, all the weird things you always want to do in the World of Darkness in this ancient fucking setting, and it all feels new and fresh. All the mechanics and charms and the way they're implemented feel like someone who has been making games in the year 2020 designed them, as opposed to someone who hasn't gotten past like the 90s. Like it feels like if someone had taken Exalted and World of Darkness style stuff from that time period, but actually wrote them with like some amount of emphasis on new ideas and streamlining and making things easier for the players and easier for the storytellers. It's like getting a more polished version of that experience, which is exciting because it means that Exalted versus World of Darkness isn't just a game for playing like Solars and Abyssals and whatever. It's also a game for going back and playing around with that setting if you even don't want to do the Exalted stuff, because there's other options in the book that get a little weird and interesting for how you want to play your game. That would be my pitch. I mean, there's stuff in there like new cool Exalt types and interesting powers and great ways to structure characters and stuff. But really, it's the options. It's the potential. It's taking all those books you might have collected on your shelf in your teens and 20s and being like, you know what? I can look at these books again with a different set of eyes. It's something our podcast specifically liked about Godbound, because we can't talk about Exalted without talking about Godbound. Kevin Crawford took like the entire second edition library and said, now you can go back and speed run this stuff, or now you can go back and make these guys like your servants and your minions, and you're the dude running the fucking Beholder cult. Essentially, with Godbound or with games like it that he produces, the way Sinomony does their games, it turns an existing library we've had for decades. You can open up the Ravenloft's AD&D books, and now all that stuff is available to you and usable in different ways, and like it revives it. It gives it new life. It's like nostalgia, but you're actually doing something new and interesting and not just digging up the past. It's an interesting way to let you play a game. So that's my pitch for Exalted versus WoD. If anyone else wants to add more into that, please feel free.
Well, I don't know much about it myself.
You wrote the book, bud. you know more about it than we do, I feel like.
I kind of want to go last if anybody else has.
No, that's totally fair. So I've actually previously run the original edition of Exalted vs. WoD, actually, like, not back in 2020.
Oh, yeah, we did
with
too.
some friends.
Listeners should know that if they've heard of Heaven for Everyone. Yeah.
I actually ran mine, I want to say, like, maybe a few months after I finished listening to that. But I really enjoyed the original version, but it definitely had some... I don't want to say like mechanical issues, but just like I think that there was a bit of disconnect between me and like the book sometimes. And as that we learned, I also, until very recently, didn't know how to actually do combat in World of Darkness. So only been running it for 15 years. It's totally fine.
That was a whoops moment.
There are people who like wrote those books for over a decade who did not know how various pieces of the combat system worked, like movement being always a declared action, as in it uses up your turn.
Fuck.
It turns out most of the people writing it just thought movement was reflexive, and like, no, that's not actually how the books are written. Eddie Webb, who was like the lead on Vampire 20th Anniversary, was not aware that it used up your action to heal by spending blood points. because
Oh,
that's
fucking right.
yeah, he
Yeah,
was.
no, let's bring this up right now so people can hear this and go on the Reddits and say that can't be true.
Right.
Yeah, that was true. He did not realize that it was brought up during. It was brought up. Should we change this? What do you mean change it? That's how it already works. No, it isn't.
For
Look at
reference,
Vampire Revised on page X. What the fuck? So, I mean, it was. This is. If you look at the Kindred of the East Companion, it part of the like rules overhauls tell you like it, how does spending chi to heal yourself work? It's like, well, you can just do it reflexively, the same way vampires can spend blood points to heal themselves. And if you actually look at Vampire, either second edition or revised, you'll discover vampires can't reflexively heal themselves by spending blood points. So, there are plenty of authors who have worked with the system who did not track all of the nitty gritty of how the combat system worked, because there was a lot of dumb fiddly shit in there.
It honestly makes me feel so much better. Like
Very,
hearing
very
that.
few people have ever played that system purely, completely rules as written.
But besides that, I do really enjoy the changes that you've made to revised, be it the additions of extra stuff that came in it with new exalt types and other things, and just the clarification on charms, or how that how that some charms had been reorganized from others. It really, I felt like that the game shined even better than the original version.
I should hope so. The original, I mean, you can go ahead and say mechanical problems, because they had plenty. The original was written in 17 days. From I'm going to do this to okay, draft complete. We go to layout, and there was I want to say 0 playtesting done. Playtesting subsequently turned up a lot of things that could be better, and now I hope most of them are. Excellencies and persistent defenses, especially, major issues that just made the game very boring in the first. They kind of went from wow, this is like crazy overpowered fun to man, this is fucking boring. We just turn on our win button.
Yeah.
After the first couple scenes of having the win button, the shine wears off of it.
Yeah, that's something that I think we've talked about before, where it's like, yeah, sunlight could kill vampires instantly, no saves, but like that's fun once.
Oh yeah, the solar anima as sunlight.
I was thinking about that in relation to all the Nazis that got murdered in the tail end of this season, like by the thousands. Where it's
Something to look
like,
forward to.
yeah, it's something to look forward to, listeners. It's not spoilers for the sake of spoilers, even though don't talk to me about spoiler culture. I swear to God, not in my own pot. Anyway, like we're doing it, and it's like, yeah, this is awesome. Exactly once, not because you don't want to do it more in the future, but because it's like, well, it's just happening as a background thing now at this point, right? Like it's going. We got to it. It's like Sunlight Against Vampires. It felt like.
Yeah.
Like I could see it happening. I could see what Holden was talking about there in the design notes, where it's like, don't let him do it. It doesn't last as long as you think it will.
Yeah, I would honestly say that if that going forward, if that we had another like kind of mass combat kind of situation like that, I would almost want to just treat like those mooks as just set dressing. Just do whatever you want with them.
That makes sense. We'll get to that later, though, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm working on. Well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Unless there's anything else we want to say, we'll move on to the game premise itself. I'll do a light pitch, and then people can pitch up the slack, if that's all right.
Well, I was going to say that as,
go for it.
Somebody who's actually never played World of Darkness, I've
Oh,
always been
yeah.
aware of it. This is a very fascinating thing, because I've always been aware of it, and I've always kind of liked the idea of the whole secret cultures and stuff like that, but the whole fact of that there's just such an oppressive darkness to the game that I could never get over, and the fact that this game lets me now experience something that everybody else has been doing it from fresh light, that doesn't feel like I'm having to be have the setting break me and my character down to play in it is very interesting. So I now get to understand what everybody's talking about, but honestly, not a lot. There's a lot of names.
Right?
There's a lot of names. But yeah, that's one advantage, again, of Exalted versus World of Darkness in that respect, just from an Exalted player.
I think that's ended up sort of. It's got a lot of weird little stealth virtues that it wasn't intentionally necessarily designed for, but that sort of emerged as knock-ons. Like the fact that these are any Exalted versus WoD game is inherently a crossover game because the Exalted are just bombing their way into someone else's story, you know. So it's once you start down that road, it's very easy to do broader crossover. Like, it's not just confining yourself to Exalted versus Vampire, but here are the mages, and here's some. We'll fight werewolves this week. But if you also had some weird, obscure book on your shelf that you always liked from back in 1990, fucking whatever, but so many of those were hard to work with or implement in the average story, you can just pull that out and like, here's some more weird shit. And it's like, shit is already so weird, it's not really a disruption now. So it's actually, in its own strange way, kind of the big crossover book the World of Darkness always wanted but never got.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that.
The expanded universe.
By way of a wrecking ball as the framework.
It's like Exalted are very powerful, but it's not as disruptive as you would think. It's as disruptive as you want it to be.
Yeah. So this is the second actual time I've gotten to play this. I've been in one other campaign. I guess Chronicle is our parlance. Fuck it. If you're wondering how much like the White Wolf people care about using their special terminology, not very much. So this is the second time I've actually gotten to play this, and the previous game was very much in sort of the default mayhem mode, where it's just we crash into vampires and we kill a fuckload of vampires, and we run into like mages, we beat the shit out of a fuckload of mages, and we run into Pentax and we wreck Pentax, and just pure adversarial, leaning into the verses. Just a game of violence and mayhem and disruption, destruction. And that's sort of like, there are two sort of assumed modes you're going to fall into, and that's the first one. And the second is trying to play more of kind of a standard World of Darkness-ish game, which is to say conspiracies and factions and politics, and recurring NPCs that don't just die the first time they get within shooting distance of the Dawncast.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we've ended up doing here, where it's like Exalted in the World of Darkness rather than just Exalted burning down the entire World of Darkness, although we are still extremely powerful and able to throw our weight around a lot more than a newbie pack of werewolves or a coterie of baby vampires would.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that the best way to describe this game would be like, it is like, obviously it's Exalted versus World of Darkness, but the way that we played it, it felt more like Exalted cross World of Darkness, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I was just going to say that it's like getting a new player experience, except you don't have to suck and you don't have to bow out to everybody else, which is refreshing.
Yes, we're a power faction on whatever map we drop into. And we've been throwing our weight around. That's probably in the next season going to start coming back on us, I suspect.
Probably.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is exciting, though. Like, we're all excited for that.
Yes.
I love the other shoe. I love reaping. so much.
Looked around, now we get to find out.
To find out is divine.
And we've also got kind of a weird, fucked up group of heroes. There's like very large scare quotes around heroes. So, but I guess that's getting into the game, which was what we were about to do, and we dragged it back to
No, we all we did was bridge it and
game.
segue.
Okay, that's getting into the campaign where we went back to the game.
No, that's a good segue.
I would say this group of Exalts are probably one of the most protagonizing I've encountered. You know, honestly,
you do tend to play with groups that lean into like big, huge dick solars.
No. See, I'm not even talking about the awful monster people I used to game with. I'm talking about like in our good groups. Like,
no, I know that's who I was thinking of. They tend to play horrible fucking solars.
Yeah, in Prince of the Universe, the Solars were pretty rough, and then there was Congenials, which Sam is from, actually. That was an early game. That was our first spin-off game.
Solars, no sense of right and wrong. Yeah.
Right? And Congenials, it was called Congenials because you're supposed to be nicer people, and they were pretty good. They didn't seem like they were super comrade-y.
No, we didn't really have much connection to each other.
Heaven for Everyone was settling in pretty well, but I think this group because Heaven for Everyone's teenagers, but this group that were like adults, it's like adult Exalts, in a modern world and not teens in the 80s. Yeah, they seem pretty solid. Like everyone's trying to help, everyone is chipping in, everyone is like worrying about problems other people's have and like are suggesting resolutions and like trying to like preemptively try and help. Like it seems like a solid mix.
Mm-hmm. And yet, we have two infernals in the group.
Yeah. Right? That's the best part.
We have one character who's absolutely dedicated to making the world a better place, and like their toolkit for doing that is a toolkit for turning the world into a radioactivity powered toilet.
Yeah, it's interesting how you've done that with like the infernal power set, because like I'm grabbing what's like I'm not going to get into my stuff real deep just yet, but like I'm grabbing stuff that's ostensibly the helper kit. Like if you look at the solar kit, there's a few things in there, right? Like you all can see it, listeners. Like there's that one for repairing and fixing and upkeeping things. I'm even talking about 3rd edition and 2nd edition. Like there's that whole tree devoted to keeping your friends' equipment fixed and your stuff running and like building things and doing stuff for other people and making sure the farmers have a well and an aqueduct and we just can't leave unless we give them float plane glass, right? All those charms are there and all the medic stuff, like putting people back together, making them healthier than they've been before, punching them with your fist so hard that now they're 30 years younger, the solar medicine bullshit. Like it's all there. And the Infernals have stuff like that, but when you grab it, it ruins things. Like I think the Infernal charm set in Exalted versus World of Darkness, which is an empowering game. Like being an Infernal Exalt is super empowering in this game. You punch so high above your weight class, and you punch so much higher than some of the other some of the other Exalts, like the Solar, in some instances, and it's a little ridiculous. Actually, it's pretty fun, but it's like the best interpretation of Warhammer 40k's ruinous powers you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Like Warhammer 40k and Games Workshop are a bunch of hacks and fucking frauds. But like playing an Infernal, it's difficult to make the right decisions because the other foot always falls on other people. And you just have the option of dropping it, usually for no reason at all. It's tricky to be a good guy with solar powers or infernal powers.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to send somebody to hell forever.
And sometimes that's not a bad thing.
Well, depending on who you ask, some might take issue with that statement, but
for sure.
Depends who runs that hell.
There are asterisks involved here, and it depends on who's going where. Look, if John loves drowning himself, wants to go to the hell of always being drowned, that seems like a bonus for him. Okay? I'm not going to question it. He's just got an eternal reward, and the demons there are just super fucking confused. Mad. They asked me not to do that again.
So just make a furry hell.
One way ticket to the hell of autoerotic asphyxiation. Thank you.
David Carradine has just logged on to the conversation, and he's off. So this game takes place.
Dark.
So this game takes place in London in the year 2021, probably around October to fall-ish. Like I think Halloween just happens right around when the season ends, guys, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sound about right.
Yeah. I think we agreed that COVID didn't happen. That's the one big thing. Because if COVID did happen, I would have been playing up a lot more. Like I would have been like 5 feet. Come on, guys. Like, yeah, let's hang out, but keep your fucking distance. I know I'm a demigod, but I'm not.
We're not. Yeah, we
didn't do that.
I don't know that we explicitly did that, but
We ignore
it
it.
hasn't really come up in the game. Sadly, the UK, whether you with playing it as though COVID hasn't happened or like COVID has happened, produces pretty much the same UK. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
You are right there.
sort of like playing in the US. Unless the game goes to a hospital, you're not going to notice much of a difference.
Womp womp.
Oh,
I
Hey.
remember when the pandemic started, the first couple of months, I was like, it'd be really interesting to fucking run a vampire campaign set during this fucking particular eye blink in history when just everything's shut down, everybody's sheltering in place, everyone's staying in their homes. My God, it must be a bitch to get blood. And it was like 3 months later, it's like, Denny's is reopened. Okay. Well,
You're like, I remember when the pandemic started. I remember when the pandemic was the biggest problem in the world. Remember when that was a distant, calm memory? This is as bad as it gets.
See, when the pandemic started, everyone was walking their dog all the time because that's the one way you could get out, something. So it would be easy.
It's like that YouTuber who keeps having herself show up from the past to tell her what the future's like a year later. Oh yeah, the
boy.
brush fires that were burning down all the forests. That you would have thought that would have been a bigger deal this year. Yeah.
No.
They're still going, aren't they?
oh.
She's like, what else
I'm just
happened?
remembering the fucking Ant-Man meme,
Ant-Man meme.
from the pandemic, from around when the pandemic started. Yeah, after he got blinked back in,
Oh,
he's in the car with what's his name, Louis or whatever.
oh yeah. I remember those memes. Yeah. That's a good one. Remember when Avengers Endgame was like the biggest Marvel ever was, and now it's not going so well for them? Whoops.
Yeah.
Oops.
But yeah,
Anyway,
London,
so-
2021.
That's
Brexit is
traumatizing.
happening. The COVID. We've chosen not to make it a game about COVID. Put it that way.
Yeah. Else, again, it would have been ridiculous.
Yeah, we would have needed to have man-sized vents for everyone. Oh wait, no, we still did that anyway, didn't we?
Good times. All of us met up. I don't quite remember how. I think we all incidentally met each other and then just collected together in a clump. Like one person went one person, that person met another person, and it just kind of formed up. And I think that sidereal was involved because there's sidereal in play, right?
A friendly sidereal who's an NPC put us together, and we don't really talk about her much because we don't remember her terribly well.
Yeah, she's a sidereal.
A lot of the party remembers her. I've been making a point to make sure that it's a new intro every time.
Every time.
I mean, she has, what do you call it? She has the thing, Cipher, Arcane, something or other.
Arcane, yeah.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of arcane.
Just gonna throw it out there. Yeah, it's set in London. London's kind of a nightmare. Yes or no? I don't know. It's London.
So
It's London.
the basic premise for this was basically, hey, I'm gonna set up like a tower of cards of supernaturals that are all kind of like doing their own thing, and then we're gonna have Exalts happen and just see what happens. And that was my entire basic premise for this.
Yeah.
And it's gone over amazingly to see what happens whenever you guys interact with one of those societies. Because, like, there's been a couple instances where you guys go in and it's like, oh no, this is not cool. We're not going to let this happen. And then other times where you're like, oh yeah, no, these guys are cool.
We're gonna
We'll
let
just
this
hang out
happen.
with them. Like that time that you, like, literally set a dude up with another person by accident.
Oh, yeah. We got that pathetic mage hooked up. If only he knew how little we thought of him.
Oh no, I need to listen to that episode. That's the one I missed.
Oh yeah, same here. I still haven't. Well, yeah, I still haven't actually heard that one.
Is that the
I'm
one we went back in
so-
time?
Yes, that's one of those.
Yeah, Peter and I took a vacation and went back in time. Yeah, we fucked around a lot. Like
Yeah,
a
that
lot.
was our prototype for
Other
possible
things.
plot for season 2.
Yeah, we in the biz, Pete, we call that foreshadowing. Foreshadowing later season plots, like a real show, like we're Babylon 5. You, me, and I don't remember the name of the guy who made it.
Jay Stravinsky?
Yeah, that guy.
J. Michael Stravinsky.
I was like, Ira Stephen Bear?
I honestly have no idea.
Anyway. Yeah, we're sort of just bouncing off of the supernaturals and what's going on in the in London.
Yeah. I was going to say, I honestly had a lot of fun making the different societies and how they interacted with each other. The one thing that I think that I made sure not to do is to have them basically ready to collapse, like if you guys didn't do anything with them. So like I didn't have any like Sabbat interference with the vampires. So like there wasn't really a whole lot of internal turmoil with the vampires, unless of course you guys did something.
Like they were stable from the get-go is what you're saying?
Yep, they were stable from the get-go, but if you guys influence someone else to mess with them, or if you guys just influence them and started messing with stuff, then they'd start like internally kind of collapsing.
The
That's a good
open
way to
world
do
of
it.
darkness approach has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've been liking the kind of fluid nature of it, where we can kind of pick up and drop plots as we go along. We don't need to kind of pursue them to the very end like it's a goddamn speed run.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes we'll do vampire shit, but then sometimes, we'll find out that someone's been fucking around with Sam, and it's like, all right, we gotta go kill those people.
I think that also worked out really well because we had a couple times when we couldn't get the whole crew together. So it was like, okay, yeah, that's fine, no worries. We'll just go off and do this other thing.
It's a pretty good simulation of what like an open world like World of Darkness game would look like. The way you can kind of just pick and choose the factions you interact with. Because if they were to do a video game of World of Darkness, they would never do it the way tabletop suggests it, where you're like neonates and you don't have a lot of pull to you. A video games about the power fantasy, they would definitely start you off as having more pull, having a little more push. So you'd be able to pick and choose what factions you're dealing with and handle them kind of right off the get-go, right? So like this game is kind of like that, where you can just right away interact with vampire stuff or deal with Fomori or interact with demon things or just beeline into someone else's plot for a little while and just kind of, make actual physical progress because your toolkit gives you a lot of permanent gains.
Yeah, I think that the only session that I had like the whole thing planned from the get-go was the first session. The rest of it was, I had most of it written up, but like, you guys are Exalted. There's only so much I can literally plan for you all.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah. And we have jumped off the rails a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the game so far, what were some of the things you like? We threw a curveball towards. Like, what were some things you just kind of didn't see coming?
I did not see the interaction with the mages as soon as you did. Not to say specifically, like they're obviously they're two mages who are pretty obvious you would interact with, but I meant like what I mean by that is like Mage Society as a whole. I did not see you guys interacting with them as quick as you did. I thought you guys were going to hold off on that, so I kind of had to really quickly be like, oh, I need a voice for these guys. I need to figure this out. Oh, no. The other thing was the finale that we have for season 1. I had no idea that was coming. If you had told me when we started this, that was going to be how that we ended season 1, I would have like looked you in the eyes and been like, oh, what?
Yeah,
How?
that did take a turn.
We went places.
I mean, if you're going to go places, you may as well go places as an Exalted.
Yes.
I mean, it's I a year ago I would have told you that there was no way in hell that I was going to die without ever getting to basically engage with any of that shit from that particular mage book, despite that it's one of my favorites on my shelf.
Oh, seriously? That's awesome.
I mean, there's so much weird shit just kicking around the world of darkness, and I am positive that many of those books have never actually made it. Their content has never made it onto the table in anyone's campaign.
Yeah, that weird nonsense is what we're all about. I love that kind of stuff. Especially where we went with all the I don't want to get too specific. It was fun.
So, should we talk about characters then?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
now's a
must
good
we?
time.
All right.
Who wants to go first?
Sam does? Okay.
Oh, I'm going first. Okay.
All right, so what we're looking for is like who they are, maybe a brief description of their physical stuff, and kind of what their toolkit's like, maybe, and just other stuff you want the listeners to know going on into season 1.
Okay. Since this is my first World of Darkness, I went fairly standard. I wanted just a young adult who has been thrust into this same way I was going to experience it. So Rowan is his name. He's a 20-something architect who's recently encountered the nasty side of the World of Darkness, as you do, and awakens as a lunar exalted of the No Moon caste, and is just trying to deal with being a normal person stuck in all this supernatural stuff. He's probably what you'd consider the anchor character if you had a movie, or the heart if you did the 5-man band.
No, the anchor, that's a really good one because yeah, it's your perspective. All the characters have fresh perspectives, but yours is like one of the more baseline people perspectives that they're going to be coming into.
I've really liked that about Rowan,
Mhm.
is that you and I and Peter all sort of just dived right into, the engaging the supernatural and chewing it up and spitting it out, and sort of just grabbed the game by the neck, wherever the spotlight passes to Rowan, it feels more like the UK version of Being Human.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's like
which
this is a guy.
to be clear, is a good thing. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that show, where it's just this guy, and he's not just a guy anymore, but he is. It turns out that being able to turn into a giant man deer and gore things to death does not actually stop you from worrying about things or being embarrassed in social situations where you don't know what the fuck is going on, or just trying to make your way through this hellscape that we've fallen into. And it's really good. It's really good. I really like the vibe of that character.
Yeah, I really enjoy playing him from that aspect. There's definitely certain things that happen in the game that only happen because I've never interacted with the system before. I think I walk up to some people who are just like complete don't ever approach, and it's just like, hi, do you want to be my friend? Maybe like a couple of times.
As the resident setting expert, uh, I really love those moments where I'm like, out of character, I know exactly what the fucking coral snake's markings mean, but none of our characters do, and I'm like, oh no. And then I do nothing to stop it because, oh yes.
No, it's great. I love that. One thing about Rowan, first I should describe him physically. He's tall, lanky. I think I gave him a stovepipe hat because he has antlers from being a lunar.
I always forget he has the fucking antlers. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Goddamn
permanent
magician
perma
outfit.
antlers.
he's supposed to be a bit odd, like purposely dresses a bit odd just to look so people don't look at him. I think at one point I described him as a step below Avery from Pokemon, which is just a disaster. Yeah. But Avery, sorry, wow, Rowan. I really enjoy playing him. I, however, found that there is just whenever you're playing a character, usually it takes a couple of sessions to get into them and to figure out what they're all about, especially with the toolkit and stuff like that. Rowan is the first character who has actively rebelled against what I prescribed to him and just flopped to something else. He is a little bit all over the place with mechanics, and yeah, it's kind of funny though, I will say.
He also ended up illustrating kind of the enormous gap between characters who are built with an eye toward combat and characters who just aren't in the system.
Yeah.
Though every now and again you do, turn into a giant man deer and just destroy things.
Oh yeah, he's pretty much a glass cannon in some aspects.
By the baseline standards of the system, he's actually not. He's not weak.
He's like a boss battle.
Your average starting vampire would have a terrible time fighting this guy. But
the fights that went the worst for you would have literally killed any other character.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the fights that went the worst for you, and you still lived.
One of them, I think, only because of a botch, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I mean, that's classic World of Darkness. That's
fair enough. Yeah.
You keep playing long enough, everybody can say that. The session would have ended completely differently if not for that one botch.
Yeah, it would have.
I think that's pretty much it for Rowan.
Oh, he's also our resident sorcerer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sorcery appears a couple of times, but most of the time I end up smashing things with deer antlers.
Yeah.
He's a sorcerer who takes a very direct approach to things.
Doesn't really have any of the blasto spells at the moment. He's also kind of our resident spirit guy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's come up a few times. We need Rowan to get to places, especially, like the Loch Ness. Remember that? We needed Rowan for that. Also escaping all those other fights we started.
That's all that's found, all spirit.
Yeah, it's weird because this is a group that has got basically two of the Twilightish thinky casts, which I haven't actually seen in this game before, and they've ended up speccing very differently. And of course, Peter's playing the other one.
Sounds like a good introduction for Peter to
go. Sure thing. So I play Sir Rigel Star. His solar thing is Celestial Sensor, and he's a Solar Twilight. He's like a guy in the 40s, good-looking, Caucasian, got stubble beard, some dark brown hair, gray suit, brown overcoat, and stuff like that. And he's the bookish type. He's like a professor at Oxford that got turned into a Twilight. Oh, and yeah, he's a son of two mages, Aurora and what's the other person? Polaris Star. So yeah, he pretty much up steeped in all that mage culture stuff, and he's been working with the mages to make sure that people don't discover some mage shit that's going around, in the British Museum and so on. So looking to make some forgeries and replace the real stuff that people find with stuff that's not real, because sometimes you have to protect the hermetic text and so on and so on.
I do keep forgetting that you run the British Museum. Like you're the museum person in London. Like that makes you super important for like every supernatural.
Yeah, a lot of people are interested in that stuff.
Like you would be a figure. Like if there was a World of Darkness TV show set in London and it wasn't about the Exalts, you would be like the figurehead characters have to go to for research bullshit. You'd come up in multiple episodes. It's like, what's up with that guy? No one ever fucks with him.
Interestingly, the first Twilight I've seen in a very long time that is not our spirit world expert and is not our sorcerer du jour.
Yeah. No, Pete's like another fighter, like with the martial arts and whatnot. Oh, and the
Well, no.
super specialization?
Well, my specialization is in the craft charms. I focus
Yes.
on craftsmanism tools and eventually buy into Wonder Forging Genius. The only reason why I bought that sidereal martial art is so that I can do something in combat, because my character is totally not combat, oriented.
Yeah, but
But
that took you from 0 to like 10 very quickly.
yeah,
Very
pro,
quickly.
The jump was steep.
Although
pro tip, guys.
I do
Yeah.
think you have that. Don't you have that charm that lets you just like use your like intelligence and academics for anything?
Yeah.
Yes, I do have that, but that means I'm spending like one or two, well, one essence plus one willpower to replace my rolls or something like that
For
Yeah.
sure.
each turn.
Yeah.
It makes you shockingly competent for what your character does, like as their main thing. That one investment really kind of spiked you.
So yeah, I can fill in for a lot of rolls, but I can't do it too much.
Hmm.
And yeah, seriously, pro tip for anyone that doesn't do combat character and wants to do something combat. Black Shards Falls like Ice. That's the first level, you know, martial arts for one of those trees, and it just lets you do 8 damage lethal in an AOE, and you don't have to even aim or anything. You just click and release the fireball there.
Yeah, it's strong.
Yeah. Yeah, so this character is more of the smarty pants of the group, more focused on the book smarts, and it seems that also, based on our roles, the investigator type, the perception person.
Yeah.
And are into respectable society, which we badly need because, dear God, the other two characters are not built for that.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no, you're not.
Yeah.
the guy that has resources and a dragon's nest and mentors, and also an
The one we
enemy.
mooch off of. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Someone's got to pay the bills, and if it's not going to be Raython, it's going to be Peter.
Yeah. So yeah, I also built him with that animal control at max so that I can do all my magical bullshit and not spike in, my animal flare everywhere. Because originally I had the idea of, hey, maybe this character can be the teaching guy, so can teach people real good. But if I'm glowing like the sun in the middle of Oxford, someone would notice. So maybe have to have some stuff option for that.
Yeah, don't want to get your tenure revoked. That suck.
Yeah, yeah.
So, have you brought up that how you're a Prince of Mars yet?
Well, my parents are hermetic mages, and apparently hermetic mages have some kind of chantry in the orbit of Mars. So, by devil's standard, that makes me the Prince of Mars.
So, like the wizards in World of Darkness have have a wizard castle on Mars, and Peter's like so rich he's basically royalty. Like you have wealth 5, right? And like
Yeah.
it's inherited money. You didn't go out and like just win in a card game. You got that money. It's yours, but it was given to you. So like just saying, Martian royalty, Twilight
Well,
cast solar.
World of
helps
Darkness
having
is so
Mentor
weird.
5 as well.
Yeah. All of that.
Archmages.
Because your parents, what level of wizard are his parents?
Archmages.
What is that? Define that for the audience.
So Archmage usually means that they're at least a Rite 6, which means that reality doesn't like them being back on the real world, so they usually spend most of their time on the Umbra.
So I feel like that can be abstracted to be like royalty pretty quickly.
I
They're so
mean,
powerful and strange.
it's
They're
a
too
vampire
perfect
equivalent
for
of
this
a
world.
Sorry. It's a vampire equivalent of a Methuselah, so above Prince.
I did not realize this. I was sitting on their couch just eating their fucking Cheetos for a weekend. Oh my god. Okay.
Drinking some Four Loko. Classic.
I mean, I was saying that he was a Martian.
Layla has
prince.
streetwise. She was not touching the fucking Four Logo. Okay.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
So
I still vividly remember it's not long after I got Twitter. I ended up following John Chambers, the second edition Exalted developer, and just he doesn't tweet very often, but this was one of his tweets. It's just like, I got a hold of some Four Loko, and then just the next week, why didn't any of you warn me?
Oh God. Betrayed.
Where were you on this, guys?
So yeah, that's something that I feel like doesn't get brought up enough about Peter's character, but it's something you should keep in mind as you're watching the show. And he's being.
I feel like my parents have like a space castle on Mars or something. It's impossible to bring up enough.
Yeah, right.
One day we'll have to visit.
I mean, that's going to happen in season 2, right? Because once we figure out that like the time travel thing works, we're going to need like wizard people to help, right?
Fuck yes.
Yeah, I guess you guys are gonna go get embroiled in some hermetic politics and go fight wizard duels in Doistep, I think.
Excellent.
Sounds fun.
I don't know what any of this means.
Me neither, but it sounds great.
Oh man, there's going to be so many words for me to mispronounce.
Yeah. See, that's why it's good to have Brandon around this, because he actually played at least werewolf and mage, versus us where we were like, oh yes, we're going to do Exalted versus World of Darkness, but I put all the stats in. Has anyone read anything other than vampire? Nope.
Right. Yeah, I only got through vampire and a little bit of old mage, and I was like, fuck this noise. And then I got wraith for a bit, and we did wraith larps in this house that had like water damage, and it was cold all the time. It looked like it was abandoned. The poor fucker who was renting it had to pay like, it was like $900 or something in a town where you could get a rental for like $400. I don't know. It was a nightmare. He left like a year later
Oh man.
back to Toronto because that house felt fucking haunted after we did wraith larps in it.
You've awakened something there.
But that's our knowledge of Old World of Darkness, kind of as a whole. So coming on in with someone who knows a lot about it is refreshing. With people who know a lot about it, because I don't know anything about the mage stuff.
Yeah, mage was my jam back in high school, so
Love me some mage.
I played a lot of that.
Run a
So who'd
mage
like to go
game
next?
for us, Brendan. I have not gotten to play since high school. No, so I guess that leaves our infernals.
Let's go with the more traditional one first.
Okay, so which of us is that? No,
Your concept is very out there, but I feel it's a little more digestible. Like if you'll pardon the phrase, what was it? Guitar witch?
yeah. So that was where it went. Is I pulled up the character sheet and I just get to the concept line. I just write down guitar witch. And I looked at it for about like 20 minutes. And I go, I can't actually pitch this to anybody. It's going to sound fucking stupid. So, spoilers, every creative sort worth their salt has like severe imposter syndrome. So, instead, I did what any sane person would do and just opened up another text file and did up the characters, basically their premise and backstory as like a short story. Of the sort that you would find at the front of a World of Darkness book, an opening fiction. And I just passed that around, like, that's my character. So, briefly, like, Layla is a guitarist in a shitty, struggling London rock band. Who, because I gave this character, this is somebody who exalted, so I gave her performance 5. She's actually really fucking good at what she does. Attracted the attention of a Toreador vampire, and that ended horrendously poorly for everyone, except for the fucking vampire. Which eventually led her on her downward spiral that led to infernal exaltation, as you do. So, she has now got the stolen power of hell and a fairly severe grudge, and is at the start of our story looking for the vampire who wrecked her and her friends' lives to pay him back. And I believe we're going to host that file that I wrote, and it'll be, you should see it somewhere on your screen. There should be a link right now. And that's a bit important because we don't get most of the material in there like on screen during the first season, but we interact with it a fair bit. Like that's her motives in there. That is a lot of the characters' depth in there, because she is not terribly horsey about this finding out there's an entire world of like monsters and shit in London thing. Like she refuses to address Rigel by his solar name. She's like, no, I'm not calling you the Celestial fucking Censor. You're Rigel. You have a real name. God damn it. You know. We have not actually gotten End of Sadness's name out of them. But, like that's the End of Sadness is going by the wayside if we ever do. She's basically participating in the World of Darkness under protest, but fairly enthusiastically when it does come up. She has seen that the end of days is coming and is taking that fairly seriously. We ended up with two vicious. Okay, I guess I'm supposed to describe the character. Layla's in her early 20s. She looks like someone out of the London punk scene, and we've ended up with sort of two very different takes on the infernal that is not like super horsey about being evil. She's just sort of like, all right, I've got the power, I've got these hellish powers, I'm going to use them on people who have it coming, and there's a lot of fucking people out there who've got it coming, you know. Our other infernal takes a very different tack.
Yeah, that's for sure. Do you want me to take from there?
Yeah, unless people have anything to jump in and add.
Just a quick thing, like you really downplayed your short story. It's amazing.
It's
Everybody
super
should
good.
go see
Yeah.
it. It makes you care so much about everything, and not in a whole lot of.
It's a really solid tone setter for a game. Like it definitely anchors the game in a certain narrative and a certain perspective, which is refreshing. It's the kind of character pitch you want for a game because it lays down that foundation and gives a lot of onboarding for other characters.
Yeah, it's part of why I do that as well, is that if I don't do something like that, you tend to see. So for me, my big takeaway from all these decades of role playing is the surest kiss of death for any game is if like one player shows up with like 3 pages of notes and like drama and like this very kind of serious character. That they want to do dramatic stuff with, and another shows up with like Bingo the Malkavian clown. So that approach, sort of, I think, let me make a declaration of intent of like what I'd like our tone to sort of default to. You know, is like monsters are real. Monsters actually do real damage to real people's lives.
I think that we've tried to stick with that. I think that sometimes I do tend to get a little bit more goofy with some of the other character with some of the NPCs, particularly
Which is fine.
the mages.
Which is fine. Exalted versus World of Darkness is designed to sort of be able to flex in its tone, and this campaign in particular has done a masterful job of swinging between kind of absurdity and like actual serious drama without undermining either of them. And that's just down to us having a really good GM.
Oh, thank you. I was actually going to add in for the story that you wrote. Like not reading that and then going in my opinion, not reading that and then going into this game is like listening to like the Proto Men albums, but not actually reading the lyrics with like the descriptions and everything in it.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you can get this rad music, but like you are missing out on like some of the background stuff.
Yeah, and we're probably going to engage with the stuff in there more in future. Like, it is going to become more relevant, not less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, season 2, like season 1 onboarded all of these concepts for all of the characters, like in bits and pieces, and then season 2 is going to be a lot of the payoff.
Yeah, but I mean,
Which is
even to this
important.
point, Layla has been very, even with the rest of the circle, been very private about her vendettas and kind of what's driving her. She's just been picking around the edges of that, figuring out what's possible and what it all means. But it is in future, in season 2, almost certainly going to come to the fore a lot harder. She doesn't. She does not like sharing her her tragedies with anybody, even if they're people she's come to know and trust.
No, for sure, and that's definitely like more rewarding to kind of explore than just to have it sort of one after another come on out. Kind of get the meaning?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just like, it's time for my info dump episode. You know,
Yeah,
a very special session of Exalt.
exactly.
Oh no, why did they name this episode In Memoriam? Oh no. Well, then I think that there's just one other person to get through.
I don't think there's a lot more to say because she sort of just like sits there like glaring resentfully at the fact that she is now a main character until the story pushes her to action.
Yeah,
That's Layla for now.
and the character is very much enhanced. Like it's a solid character in the sessions we did, but knowing the backstory and like reading the document, pretty solid. Good work.
Mm-hmm.
Just from a background establishing perspective. So Holden dropped that. I didn't really. I kind of just stopped writing out my character's backstory and gave up.
Shit.
Not in like a bad way. In a. This is all right. I don't need to do this anymore. I can wing it.
God damn it.
That's not me shifting blame or anything, by the way. That's just me going like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else. So for End of Sadness, conceptually speaking, there's a few things that are the most important thing about the character. So they're an infernal exalt, which means all of their powers have kind of a twist to them, and the twist usually isn't something they have to pay. It's a good way to conceptualize the package. It's all based on infernal exalted and hell from Exalted, you know, the thing, and a lot of the World of Darkness interpretations of it that came up in Kindred of the East, I think. Right, Holden?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So very shock and awe power set, and not gentle at all. So the big point about End of Sadness is there's a charm at the end of the Exalted Infernal Tree that, when you get it, unlocks your own personal hell. It's basically a pocket dimension, and you can build it to host a civilization. People who go in can spend their entire lives there. No big deal. The Infernal cannot. They have to spend at least half their life outside of it as they do inside of it. End of Sadness is acting on the knowledge that eventually they'll have an arc that they can take their cult away with. And they don't know about that clause. So they're writing a lot of checks that they probably can't cash and haven't realized that yet. I wrote the character to be a bit of a, I don't want to say tragedy, but the other shoe's going to fall on them and it's going to hit them hard is kind of the setup here. You know, maybe I'll get away with it before that happens. It's not going to happen, though. The other part is End of Sadness knows the end of the world is happening. In that they think it's already happened. Like the end of the world has occurred. We're in a post-apocalypse. Because apocalypses happen slowly. So it's only a matter of time before everything falls apart and collapses. And we recorded this before 2022, so that's not our fault. So, fuck off. And they're trying to get as many people as possible onto an arc and get them the fuck out of here. They're not here to save the world. They're not here to destroy the world. They don't want to conquer it. They don't want to rule it. They don't want to make things worse for people, but they're going to grab the people who need to leave and get them out. And that's where the cult comes into play. Because their power set works really well if they have a cult. It's just instinct at this point. Like, if they gather people up and arrange them in this form and get them to worship and stuff, that creates fuel, it creates possibilities, it opens up stuff in how Into Sadness's powers work. They can grant wishes. There's a pretty bad downside, like if you disobey them, you go to hell, but they can grant you a wish once per year. And Into Sadness has just been granting wishes to all of their cult members because they're never going to call in the downside. That'd be horrific and cruel, but they always could. They're not going to, but the rules technically say that they can. So, that's there. Also, if people are like, injured or like they've lost some parts of themselves they want restored, Into Sadness can put people back together or put people together in a way the person wants to be put together by using machines and technology and scrap metal and stuff they fabricate. And after a while, a demon crawls in them and makes them a toxic pollution mutant. That's like a Power Rangers villain that werewolves fight that like Amazon creates. But Into Sadness just mass produces them by putting people, together in different ways, replacing limbs that are lost or changing people's configurations. It just naturally turns them into mutants. And usually these mutants have a really short lifespan because their mutations like kill them like a cancer from the inside out. But if they worship Into Sadness, that's another power they have. The rot stops, and actually they're fine. And actually, it's not a burden to be in this state of being. It's actually a huge boost.
That's a very nice way of describing I've created an army of Fomori.
Yeah. I mean,
me.
Yeah, right.
Members of my cult.
Yeah. So that's what's happening. But
Into Sadness is like extremely like eyeball 2 inches from the paper, as far as perspective on that goes. But yes, from any outside perspective, they have been just turning the downtrodden of London into their underground, like mutant foot clan,
right?
Of nightmare, Nightbreed hell people.
Yeah, Nightbreed hell people. I like those optics. I want Nightbreed. Nightbreed. I'm Nightbreed. I am Nightbreed. And yeah,
yes, I can give you a robot arm, and we'll cement it into place with a melted demon.
Not just a melted demon, Holden, a melted manifestation of the worst impulses and sins of mankind in liquid fuel form.
This is literally the distilled spiritual essence of hatred, and we're going to stick it in you forever.
But you get to see again, and you get to see your daughter grow up. And like, we just want you to like adopt some dogs, because like another thing Into Sadness does is they'll like go to pounds and shelters at night and steal all the animals by force. And like the ones that were going to be put to sleep, they'll like nurse back to health, and the ones that can't be nursed back to health, they'll fix with demon implants. To get them back to health. So like the good dogs go to the farm. There's a farm. Like some people have given them a farm, and there's a farm now. And the daughter walks now, and there's a farm. And that's where all the animals that are healthy go that can't get adopted out that the cultist takes care of. And then there's a kennel in the sewers next to the radioactive pile. We'll get to that in a moment. The kennel in the sewers is where the half-demon animals go, because it's not just dogs. It's like cats, possums, rats, bats, sparrows, anything that died around them. And like it's just a little bit of machinery. Like you just need some scrap metal and it fixes. And I have crafting powers too, so it's real easy to fix them up. But then they get a little crazy, so they have to go to the kennel to be trained properly. Into Sadness has animal handling 5, charisma 5 for this reason, to handle animals good.
Our third Twilight, and if only animals could make wishes.
Which the Exalted versus World of Darkness Infernals don't have castes. Those sort of melted a long time ago in the furnace of their hellish debasement, but they can basically mix and match different mechanics to sort of build something like a cast for themselves. And Into Sadness very roughly aligns with us having a third Twilight-ish,
Kind of. It's like a social Twilight with like a sniper rifle and heavy armor.
An eclipsey kind of Twilight, yeah.
I went in directions. See, I could have been a speedster, but I couldn't get to the sound barrier So because I couldn't get to the
Oh,
sound
yeah.
barrier, I had to be this.
Yeah, and whereas End of Sadness is our secondary, like, really wreck shit character. I'm the primary fighter, but
Yes.
End of Sadness is not far behind at all.
Yeah.
What was it originally when you were doing the math for him originally? You were just like, oh yeah, I can T-pose at the speed of light or whatever.
It was double the sound barrier almost, and then we got real math in because I don't know how to do math, and I understood how to do math after that a little better. That's it. That's what happened.
Oh, and then also you can talk to cars and turn them into your friends.
Okay, so we got to get back to the cult stuff. So I just described the humans and the Fomori humans and the animals and the Fomori animals. And remember, there's a zoo in London and they have gorillas, and it's just any session now it's going to happen.
So instead of a lunar going there to snack on them, have an infernal.
Every animal instantly has, like, they might get strength 5. Like they're
If I can't
royal
cyborg
training.
the gorillas at the zoo, I will walk backwards into hell facing God. Yeah.
Motorcycle drives away. I'm in a crater, instantly dead. So yeah, then there's the machines, right? So End of Sadness is really good at talking to things and controlling things and making machines do things. So there's a trick where if you look at a machine that's about as smart as a computer, like, it has circuitry and stuff, you can give it a soul, like a fake soul that's fully cognizant and aware, and it'll obey you for a certain amount of time before its mind stops working. And because End of Sadness was built specifically to take advantage of those dice pools, they very often get permanent on their rolls. And London has 13 CCTV cameras per person, you see. So you have to understand that a lot of things in London are alive and loyal to End of Sadness that don't technically have rights or a soul, like machines. This would be a good time to segue into
And
it
poor
because
people.
yeah, but like, I'm going to get them out of here. I'm taking them away from here. All right, anyone who wants to join can join. Like, you can all just join up, and the arc is coming, and we're going to get on out of here. It's going to be great. We're going to leave.
This, by the way, by sheer dint of Devon, has basically become the main character of the campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, I try not to. I do try to fade away, but it's spilled. It was hard to contain. It was hard to contain some of these parts. They all kind of flowed together really naturally. I might have played a different character if I would have known how this would have gone this time around. To be fair,
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
End of Sadness.
Yeah.
I'm not
he's
complaining.
actually-
I mean,
for being like the fucking weirdest one in the group, is actually like a surprisingly there's a lot of pathos there, and there's a lot of character there. There's a lot of personality there, and just the fact that they are so articulate with what they're doing, and yet it's so just undisguisedly, horrific. It's really fun.
hellish,
It's
right?
really fun.
mhm.
Yeah, but I will acknowledge that playing a character this character went kind of tall. I'll acknowledge that this kind of puts a burden on the group a bit, and if I would have known it would have been this much work ahead of time, I probably would have been more upfront about it and would have been like, guys, I could just do something else, and I could play something a little more straightforward. That's all I want to say.
It's fine by me because
As an
Layla
admittance.
likes, not like in character, but just the way the character's put together. She kind of likes laying in the cut most of the time. So
Yeah. So, there's a lot of things going on in London at this point because I took Cult at 3 or 4 because it spread really fast because it was a really good deal. Because London's really shit at supporting people, so there's a lot of places in the world.
mhm.
So it wasn't hard because being an infernal made it easy. So there's this cult in London that's a doomsday cult, but it's a really, really, really nice doomsday cult. They do food drives and give people shelter and adopt animals, and they all have so many dogs.
And you get healthcare, sort of.
There's healthcare, yeah. If you're really beat up about something that's happened to you and stuff, just there's a sewer and there's that nuclear pile. So under London in the catacombs, there's a place that's nuclear or hell aspected. It's kind of the same thing, and that's where Under Sadness lives with the crocodile. Because we got to talk about the crocodile very briefly. In Exalted versus World of Darkness Revised, there is the option to have a familiar again, and you could make them your spirit animal, or not your spirit animal, but more your spiritual advisor creature, your sort of Shira's got the horse kind of deal, the animal companion, but magical, or that cat that He-Man has.
You can bootstrap them up into
Pretty good,
basically a
which I
spirit,
did. So End of Sadness in their before life, had a crocodile for reasons because of the Appalachian Trail and laws and stuff and compounds and trying to make a nuclear reactor stuff. But anyway, they had a crocodile, and then when they became End of Sadness, that crocodile got bootstrapped up into a spirit familiar. So the crocodile can shapeshift into a person that passes as a person real easy, I found out, and is pretty smart and has a lot of intelligence gaps, or filling for gaps End of Sadness has. I think technically they might be smarter than End of Sadness right now.
Well, they don't
Well,
get
they're-
shot on the daily, so yeah, I would
So
say
End of
They're-
Sadness is also an exploration of the superhero side of World of Darkness that everyone says is shameful and you shouldn't enjoy. But End of Sadness doesn't know what their limitations are because they have a voice in their head. That's their unwoven coadjutator demon, the thing that bonded with them, telling them things, and it, believes it, but it also would like to verify some of this shit. So, shoot them with a bullet, right? It doesn't always hurt. Sometimes it just bounces off. Sometimes they're, oh yeah, we got to get into physical descriptions now. Good point.
Oh yes, we should definitely establish what End of Sadness looks like.
End of Sadness is of average build and average height. I think they have chromatic-y black hair. I think I described them as having. And their teeth are made of chrome. Their nails are made of mirrored metal material. And their voice auto-tunes every once in a while. Their eyes have octagon pupils. They have a cast mark on their forehead, which is like the symbol of Typhon in an octagon. And their skin is covered in first age runes that hum slightly and help deflect damage because their soak is fucking ridiculous for a character that's not powered up. Like most characters have soak 1 or 2 or something, and End of Sadness pulls in 9 on the rag, 7 I think at a resting heartbeat, up to 16 when they want to fuck around. So yeah, how do you get that? How do you hone that? Because if you're an Exalt, if you have power, the power, this demon brought them this power. It's you just have to want it. You have to figure it out. You have to pursue it. You have to let the power know what you want. So End of Sadness and their crocodile that can shapeshift into a man and knows how to use a sniper rifle, every morning in the cave, get up, have breakfast, work out a bit, shoot End of Sadness, see if they soak the bullet that time. See if they dodge it. Maybe they'll teleport out of the way. Maybe something will kick in and, that bullet won't be a problem. And yeah, it was a problem for a long time, but now most of the time End of Sadness gets shot, they just keep on going. Doesn't even hurt most of the time. Sometimes it bounces off completely. And, when fights really break out, they can't be hurt, we recently found out. Like when a machine gun shot End of Sadness for a bunch of times, and End of Sadness was just fine. Not hurt.
It's just
Walk
fine.
that one off. And, it's the superhero origin. They're literally just trying to figure it out. No one else is there to teach them. No one else has a better idea or
You took
any
a damn
idea at all.
Sentai suit for your anima power.
Yeah, we're getting to there. We're getting there. We have to get into forms. That's physical descriptions. Oh, yeah, we're here. So, anima power for an infernal cast, one of the things you can take is you have a bond with a demon that it'll become your armor and your weapon. And that weapon does egg. So clearly End of Sadness took a machine gun. That's an arm cannon that looks like a brass eel made out of pinball machine parts. That's an assault rifle.
As you do.
Does aggravated damage. Duh. And their armor gives them, a soak increase. So the armor looks like chrome, silver, mirrored, like a Zentai suit. That's like a Power Ranger suit with a helmet in the shape of their cast mark or their demon's mark, because their demon has a separate mark too. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about Despair 7 in a moment. And they have a Shinte form. That's how I pronounce it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
Japanese.
Okay. So that form is the Viator of Null Space from the first and second edition art if they had rotted apart. And then there's a theoretical third form after that with how Infernals work, but I'm not sure I'm ever going to get enough in XP in the lifespan of this game to do that. because it's a fair chunk of XP. And I have
Oh,
other things I have to buy.
All we have to do is just get to season 3. So that's
Maybe. But stuff be expensive. Despair 7 is the demon that came to End of Sadness at the bottom of a pool of fuel and offered them the chance of eternal life and power, befitting who they were as a person and who they were always meant to be, a war criminal who makes weapons of mass destruction. And End of Sadness, the person that they were, being a coward, didn't drop the lighter that would ignite the fuel and kill the monster, and instead gave up and said, yeah, sure, anything. Get me out of this shit. That's basically all the things you need to know about their relationship. It's a monster in End of Sadness' head that says, hey, look, you're meant to ruin the world. Just do it. Do whatever you want now, but this is basically what you're intended to do. Here's all your options for doing it. You know, it'd be really rad if you did these things. They'd really help pursue your goals, your real goals, to rule this place. You're going to eventually. I'm not going to push it, though. You'll come around. Maybe that's a bluff, but maybe Despair 7 knows about the catch, about not being able to leave here forever. Who can say? That might come up. I'm not too sure if we'll get there. But it's the animating intelligence behind all the things End of Sadness hijacks with their charms. So when a machine gets taken over, it's basically a flash clone, in fact, mind, moving through, communicating with itself, making drop networks, talking through computer zombie networks, getting into phones, cameras. It's probably a problem for people. Probably some mages are going to get real pissed off about this.
Yeah. You've had a really good time, I think, with the infernal charm set.
It's a really robust charm set, and like all these things I'm doing are just naturally there. They're just right there. Like this is a normal use of these charms. I could be going harder in some areas, and I'm just not because I don't want to go that way or at that pace. And there's other weirder things in there that I haven't even gotten to, and I don't think I will get to. There's too many options. There's way too many different builds you can do with this. I've gone very wide with my selection of weird options. Like the Femorai, that's its own tree.
Yeah, I have to say that by sheer accident, like I was listening to Prince of the Universe, the first recorded episode, where Nicole was complaining about not having good perception rolls, and you were like, "Oh, maybe we should take a familiar that has good perception." And now, years later,
Oh my
you've taken a
god.
familiar that has a good perception, so you can do those rolls.
See, you got to remember, I don't remember those sessions. So you're talking about something like from like 5 or 6 years ago. I can imagine that happening though. And then here we are now. I'm like, yeah, the familiar has perfect perception. I gave him like awareness perception max, and he's always by my side. And I took the spirit power that makes him immortal, that also allows him to teleport by me at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
So he'll always be there making spot checks for me. My dumb, blind moron ass.
You're dumb. You are so blind. Like when
God,
Holden
this
said
group
that
has
you
such
are
complete dog shit perception.
I don't want to know things. I already know too many things.
like when Holden said that End of Sadness's eyes are 2 inches from the paper, he wasn't lying.
But yeah, End of Sadness is, they're not a mess. They're just,
Yes, they are.
They're just trying really hard, and they're not very good at it. They probably, I don't want to say they were like a bad person in their previous life, but the choices they made were definitely the worst possible choices someone like that could make. They also were put on trial for treason by the US government for their crimes in the military. Not against people, like selling secrets and stuff, cool treason. So, they have problems.
And trouble with authority.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. They ran afoul of something in the Appalachian Trail, basically, that did not like that there was a makeshift hillbilly do-it-yourself nuclear reactor situation being put together somehow in the caves. Things went sideways very fast. It was just bad times.
So it's largely the rest of the group's job to sort of act as checks and balances on End of Sadness. being to End of Sadness. I think
Well,
it's sort of the dynamic we've arrived at.
yeah, like Endo said, this isn't like a walking time bomb. They're not trying to ruin everything. They're just trying to do their thing as efficiently as possible without hurting people and getting people out of harm's way. Like doing as much good as possible for this place, not trying to go farther than that because it's impossible to scale that way before they can leave and just take people with them. They believe that things are going to get worse and there aren't people that are going to intercede, so it's best to get people on an arc and take them out.
Yeah.
We might get to the arc in season 2.
That is the hope.
Yeah, I've been spending XP in such a way that I'm close. A lot closer than I thought I'd ever be with this charm set. It's a robust charm set.
It is a fun charm set.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it for my end. I think I talked a little bit too long, but I think that's all of it.
No, you're fine.
No.
And as far as you're concerned about End of Sadness being the main character, I would absolutely say that from episode to episode, I actually feel like that you guys kind of shift that baton around pretty admirably.
You've helped swing the spotlight that way. Yeah, you've done a very good job, I think, of making sure that everybody gets spotlight time.
Mm-hmm, for sure. It's a good
To
balance.
put it another way, End of Sadness is the most strongly motivated or self-motivated character. Like
Yeah,
the one that
self-motivated.
has an agenda, has a definite plan. My plan is like find a guy and ruin his life.
Yeah,
But not really much past that. End of Sadness definitely has a big agenda.
Yes.
Rowan is, and
He's
to a
just
large
trying to
extent,
survive.
Layla are reactionary characters, and
it comes from a philosophy I have for building characters that comes from an old lesson I learned about gaming, where you want characters to have a concrete plan, and no, you want a concrete goal and a plan to get the goal. Like you have to have those two parts, and they have to be pretty well thought out. So coming with End of Sadness is like concrete goal, concrete vision of how to get there and what the methods will be. It helps kind of follow along a plan basically and get to where you're going. And when other characters are doing that too, it kind of helps move everything in lockstep because you can see how people will bounce off each other and what will motivate each other and make each turn go.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah, plan and a goal. That's kind of I think what drives the self-motivation thing. It's just there's an internal logic and a sort of timeline to what's happening.
So is there anything else that we wanted to talk about in this little intro episode?
Yeah, anything about the system maybe? Touch on that again.
for anybody not familiar with, and how could you not be familiar with this revolutionary best-selling game that I made, and which we might throw a link to it underneath this podcast.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, it's free. So yeah, mini sales at $0. So the system itself is based on the 20th anniversary World of Darkness rules, with significant cleanup because that is an old jank ass fucking system. And I've done what I can to make it run a little bit smoother and a little bit more streamlined and a little bit more appeal to modern sensibilities. Well, still, being the 20th anniversary World of Darkness, without breaking compatibility with Vampire and Werewolf and et cetera, rather than trying to make the whole thing run on EX3. I thought it would be simpler to just add the Exalts to the older and well-fleshed chassis, of the World of Darkness, since they were going to be guests there anyway. I don't know how much more we want to say about it. If we want to actually go into thoughts on the game and the system, or save that for end of campaign roundup. What do you think?
We could do that. We'll save it for then. We'll probably have more thoughts, and it looks like you had some
Yeah.
changes you're implementing, like coming down the pipe, maybe. So that'll be good.
I've got a supplement coming down the pipe. Not so much changes. The revised is pretty much. I'm pretty much happy with the revised edition.
Perfect.
But I've got some more stuff coming that I'm working on right now, including things like a formal system for huge Donnybrooks and quote unquote mass combat, informed by thoughts on how our giant Nazi brawl shook out.
Yeah, that definitely was. It was good to see where the seams were on that one.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's
All
also something that, frankly, I don't think World of Darkness has ever managed tremendously well. Like there have been several stabs at like a quote unquote mass combat system. Wraith the Great War did one. War and Concordia did one.
Dark
The Dark
Ages,
Ages
Vampire?
Companion has one, and they're all working on very different paradigms. I don't think any of them are fantastic. So, and certainly none of them reckon with, or conceptually reckon with characters who have the sheer personal power of an Exalt.
Hmm.
So, it's about, they usually tend to be more about like, well, there's this huge like siege going on, so it's a system to have your vampires show up in a couple of places and, role play out a couple of quick skirmishes and shift the course of the battle, which is fine for a vampire. You're likely to show up and be the match of any 3 castle guards. As opposed to, your Exalts will literally punch the castle gates off their hinges and then just wade into it, 200 men at arms with swords, and actually have a prayer of coming out of that alive. So I'm kind of working on something like that, primarily for use if you're playing the Dark Ages variant of the game, but it should also be useful for the inevitable oh shit, we stayed in the building doing our shit too long and now there's like the National Guard have surrounded us.
Yeah, give me that battalion of tanks.
Oh god.
800 T800s.
Ah, yeah, sweet. I can't wait for Exalted versus World of Darkness Cross Terminator.
Exalted versus Skynet.
But yeah, I am glad that we did get to at least push the seams of that a little bit more, especially since this started off as basically like a playtest of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were doing character creation before the revised core book was out, and I was passing them like drafts of the book as it was in layout. And I kept dicking with it in layout almost at the last minute.
I think that we had most of this season recorded before you actually released the book.
Oh, we may well have. Like, I know that the Infernal charm set got expanded in large part because of like there are several charms in there that are basically there because to support kind of the character concept End of Sadness was chasing, and I know the Hell of Boiling Oil got more charms because I was trying to use it and I found that it just didn't have enough robust support in there to be as fun as I wanted it to be. So like that got expanded basically in response to Layla needing more shit, because Layla made me take a really close look at it. Put it that way. I'm not actually using most of the charms I added at that point, but
It was finding deficiencies too. Like I think Peter,
deficiencies. Yes.
when he was looking at it, he actually broke down what charms were like or inherited some appearance of other charms, and did like a grid layout and showed where like some splats and some ones were missing like 3 or 4 of them, or there were massive gaps or overcompensations and
That
stuff. And like,
was for Exalted X Chronicles of Darkness.
Yeah.
oh shoot, oh
Similar.
I'm sorry, that's a derail. But it's something Peter's very good at. He's good at finding those things and
He
pointing them
is.
out.
He is. He is.
Well,
All I'll say at this point is I'm much more satisfied with how and where the game has shaken out at this point compared to where I was when the last campaign I was in wrapped around this many sessions in. I think it's held together a lot better.
Nice.
Not if he's listening, not to impugn the GM of that game or any of the players. I'm talking the system. I feel like the system has not failed us here the way it did back then.
Yeah. Yeah, because that old version is just like, hey, did you take the excellency that you need for this thing you want to do? Push the button.
And now we have scene length invincibility, and we get to win every roll.
Or the old World of Darkness problem of the game doesn't know what the difference between a turn and a round is, and and now it's just up to player interpretation. Oh no, the sidereal went 7 times in a row.
Oh boy.
Lordy. All right then. So are we good to wrap then?
I think so.
Yeah, I think
Alright.
so.
That's good.
Yeah, it was a very good game, and you guys are listening to the intro, so the rest is coming up after this then. So, I was Devin.
Brendan.
Peter.
Holden.
Sam.
And this is sponsored by Nobody. Signing off.
This game is a collaboration between A Pair of Dice Lost and sponsored by Nobody Podcasts. You can find us at apairofdicelost.podbean.com and sponsored by nobody.podbean.com. You can find Exalted vs. World of Darkness over at holdenshearer.wordpress.com.